Karen Reed and Emily Saunders were two women caught in a terrifying web of abuse and betrayal, their lives forever changed by the very people sworn to protect them. What began as a simple disappearance spiraled into a dark investigation uncovering a brutal secret tied to three corrupt cops. This is the story no one wanted to tell, until now. Karen Reed had always been known as a quiet, unassuming woman living in the small town of Millbrook. She worked at the local library and kept to herself, rarely drawing attention. People in town barely knew much about her personal life, except that she had recently reconnected with an old friend named Emily Saunders, who had moved away years before. Karen's disappearance shook the town to its core. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air one chilly autumn evening. No phone calls, no notes, no signs of struggle, just silence. The police were baffled, launching a search and investigation, but weeks turned into months with no clues or leads. Friends and family grew desperate, holding on to hope that Karen would return. At the same time, several miles away in a neighboring city, an alarming discovery was made. The body of a young pregnant woman, Emily Saunders, was found in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts. She was badly hurt and showed clear signs of terrible physical and emotional harm. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, especially when details began to emerge about the nature of her injuries. It was clear Emily had suffered long before her death. She had been tortured and left alone to die. What was most unsettling was the evidence pointing toward those who should have protected her. Three police officers who had been under investigation for questionable behavior were somehow connected to Emily's case. They had reputations in the department for being aggressive and harsh, but until now, nothing concrete tied them to any crimes. Yet, multiple witness accounts suggested these officers had been seen with Emily in the days leading up to her death. Security footage placed her near the police station on the very night she was last seen alive. Rumors started to spread that Emily's pregnancy had made her a target, that she might have been trying to reveal something dark about those in uniform. As the investigation into Emily's death deepened, it became impossible to ignore the eerie parallels to Karen Reed's disappearance. Authorities began to suspect the two cases were linked in some way. The possibility that Karen had known about the abuse and had tried to speak out or help Emily only intensified the urgency of the case. A chilling question hung over the town. What terrible secret did these women uncover, and how far would those involved go to keep it hidden? The peaceful town of Millbrook was no longer a place of safety. Instead, it had become the setting for a dark and disturbing mystery that was only just beginning to unravel. The three officers connected to Emily Saunders' case had long been the subject of rumors within the police department and the community. While they were officially respected as dedicated law enforcement, whispers of excessive force and intimidation had followed them for years. Complaints from civilians were often dismissed or mysteriously disappeared from records, and internal investigations rarely led to consequences. But the brutality found in Emily's case brought renewed scrutiny. Her injuries were unlike anything seen before: bruises, broken bones, and signs of prolonged torment. It wasn't just a random act of violence. It was calculated and cruel. As investigators pieced together Emily's final days, they uncovered chilling details. Security cameras placed her near the police station late at night, an unusual and unsettling detail. Witnesses who had been too afraid to speak initially began to come forward quietly, sharing stories of Emily's fear and desperation. Some said she had confided in friends about threats from those in uniform. Others mentioned seeing her after hours at the station, pleading for help. It appeared Emily was trapped in a nightmare, caught between her vulnerable condition and the very people meant to protect her. Meanwhile, the investigation into Karen Reed's disappearance took a surprising turn. Police found messages on Karen's phone indicating she had been in contact with Emily shortly before both went missing. The messages hinted at a secret: the two women shared something dangerous and powerful enough to put their lives at risk. Karen's social media accounts revealed posts about corruption and injustice, posts she deleted just days before vanishing. It was clear that Karen was not simply a bystander. She was involved in uncovering something that someone desperately wanted to keep hidden. The town's atmosphere shifted dramatically as more pieces of the puzzle emerged. People who once trusted local law enforcement began to question everything. Could the very people sworn to protect them be hiding dark secrets? The investigation expanded beyond Emily's death and Karen's disappearance, revealing a tangled web of intimidation, silence, and possible cover-ups. It became clear that the case was bigger than anyone had anticipated, reaching into the heart of the police department itself. What began as a missing person's case had turned into a fight against a powerful force protecting its own. The danger was no longer hidden in the shadows. It was right in front of everyone. The community waited anxiously, hoping the truth would come to light before anyone else was hurt. Forensic experts brought new urgency to the case when they uncovered evidence showing that Emily Saunders' abuse had not been a sudden event but a prolonged ordeal. Detailed medical examinations revealed old and recent injuries, broken ribs that had started to heal, deep bruises hidden beneath her clothes, and scars indicating repeated violence over several months. The pattern was clear. Emily had been suffering for a long time, trapped in a cycle of pain and fear. More disturbingly, the injuries matched methods commonly associated with those who had training in control and restraint. It was a brutal confirmation that the abuse was inflicted by people who knew exactly how to hide their violence. As investigators probed deeper, they discovered a startling link between Emily and Karen Red. Messages found on encrypted apps showed conversations that revealed trust and desperation. The women had confided in each other about the dangers they faced. Emily's pregnancy was no secret to Karen, who had offered support and encouragement despite the risks. These messages hinted that Emily was planning to come forward with evidence against the officers who had been tormenting her. She was gathering proof, hoping to expose the abuse and protect her unborn child. Karen, too, had taken a stand, pushing for justice in her own way. The weight of these revelations cast a new light on Karen's disappearance. It no longer seemed accidental or random. Instead, it appeared she had become a target because of her courage and involvement. Attempts to silence both women pointed to a deliberate effort to suppress the truth, with powerful forces at play. The investigation uncovered signs of intimidation aimed at friends and family of Karen and Emily. People who had started to ask questions or offer support. Threatening messages and sudden warnings became part of the case file, showing the lengths those involved were willing to go. A growing number of people in the community began to speak out, breaking the silence that had kept fear alive. Still, the investigation faced obstacles. Some evidence seemed to vanish, and certain officials showed reluctance to pursue the case aggressively. It was as if an invisible barrier had been erected to protect those responsible. Despite these challenges, the investigators remained determined. Each discovery brought them closer to understanding the full extent of the abuse, the cover-up, and the tragic fate of both Emily Saunders and Karen Red. The deeper the truth, the darker the story became and the more dangerous it was to uncover. The turning point in the investigation came unexpectedly when detectives found a discarded phone hidden in a dumpster near the outskirts of town. Inside, amid deleted files and corrupted data, was a faint but chilling audio recording. The voice was shaky and low, but unmistakable. One of the officers linked to Emily Saunders' case was caught admitting involvement in actions that led to her death. The recording described moments of fear and anger, moments when control slipped and violence erupted. It was a damning confession that sent shockwaves through the investigation team. This new evidence was a game changer, providing the first direct link tying an officer to the crime. But before detectives could act, another devastating discovery was made. Karen Reed's body was found deep in the woods outside Millbrook, buried beneath layers of earth and leaves, her death staged to appear accidental. The news shocked the community anew, revealing a horrifying truth. Karen had not simply disappeared. She had been murdered to silence her. The brutality and planning behind her death suggested a calculated attempt to cover up not only her fate, but the larger conspiracy at hand. As the investigation spiraled, it became clear that the corruption ran deeper than anyone had feared. The police department faced intense scrutiny as internal affairs and federal agencies stepped in to take over the case. Evidence showed signs of tampering, and whistleblowers within the department began to come forward, exposing layers of deception, intimidation, and a culture of silence that protected the guilty. The officers' actions were no longer isolated incidents but part of a disturbing pattern involving multiple victims and suppressed complaints. The community, once trusting and quiet, erupted in outrage. Protests demanded justice for Emily Saunders and Karen Red, demanding that those responsible be held accountable. Families of the victims spoke out, sharing heartbreak and frustration over the loss and the betrayal they felt from those sworn to protect them. The case exposed a stark reality: those in power could manipulate the system to protect themselves, but not without consequences. Despite arrests and charges against the officers involved, questions lingered. Who else had been involved? How many others suffered in silence? The case became a symbol of the fight against abuse of power and the urgent need for transparency in law enforcement. The investigation uncovered not just a tragic story of two women, but a call to action to prevent such horrors from ever happening again. The arrests of the three officers marked the beginning of a painful but necessary reckoning for the community. Each was charged with multiple offenses, including abuse, murder, and obstruction of justice. Courtroom battles revealed shocking testimonies and evidence, painting a grim picture of how power had been abused and justice repeatedly denied. The officers' defense teams fought fiercely, but the weight of forensic evidence, witness statements, and that haunting audio recording left little room for doubt. Slowly, the truth that had been buried for so long emerged under the harsh light of the courtroom. The trials sparked a wave of reflection and change within the town of Millbrook. Public officials promised reforms, pledging increased oversight and transparency in law enforcement practices. Community groups formed to support victims of abuse and to advocate for stronger protections. Yet, the scars left by the case were deep. Families of both Karen Reed and Emily Saunders struggled to heal from their losses, facing the unbearable reality that their loved ones had been betrayed by those who should have safeguarded them. Despite the convictions, unsettling whispers persisted. Some believed that others within the police department had been involved or at least aware of the abuse but chose to stay silent. Investigations into the department's culture continued, exposing instances of corruption and misconduct beyond the initial case. The story of Karen and Emily became a catalyst for broader discussions about power, accountability, and the systemic failures that allowed such tragedies to occur. The community's trust in law enforcement had been shattered, but a cautious hope remained. The bravery of those who spoke out and the determination of the investigators showed that even the darkest secrets could be uncovered. Karen Reed and Emily Saunders' tragic stories were not forgotten. Instead, they became a lasting reminder of the cost of silence and the urgent need for vigilance. In the end, the case was more than a tale of crime, it was a warning. It highlighted the dangers that arise when those entrusted with authority betray that trust. And it called on society to demand better, to protect the vulnerable, and to never ignore the signs of abuse. Though justice had been served, the shadow of the past lingered, urging everyone to remember the price of silence and the power of truth.